Take two. Having camera difficulty. Welcome to American Catechism episode number 62 for another state's birthday celebration. Kentucky's birthday is today. June 1st of 1792, Kentucky became a state. Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on June 1, 2026, where it is 89 degrees. On American Catechism, I enjoy researching American history, Western Civ, the Christian faith, politics, current events, and whiskey. I frequently tie the whiskey in with history and in a way that makes sense to me. So that's what I'm doing with Kentucky's history and add my personal connection to Kentucky as well as this Kentucky bourbon. Kentucky is the 15th state admitted to the Union, again on June 1st of 1792. Kentucky is a landlocked state in the southeastern United States, and before statehood, it was considered to be a part of Virginia and was the District of Kentucky. Its capital now is Frankfort, but the largest city is Louisville. Highest elevation is 4,150 feet at Black Mountain, and its lowest is 256 feet at Kentucky Bend along the Mississippi River. Even though Kentucky is landlocked because it has so many navigable rivers, it has access to the Gulf of America via the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. And one of the reasons Kentucky bourbons became so popular early on was that a large number of barrels of whiskey from Bourbon County, Kentucky were shipped west and south through the river system on barges and riverboats. Now, the name Kentucky was given to the river first and then to the state, but its origins are of the Indians, right? And we don't know exactly which group of Indians because there's two different groups that had names that sound like Kentucky. The Iroquois and the Algonquin Indians. Now, the Iroquoian Mohawk word means on the meadow, prairie, or field, and the Algonquian Shawnee name means land of our fathers or land of our in-laws. The earliest sites of men inhabiting Kentucky so far belong to the Clovis culture dating about 9500 BC. And then by 1800 BC, the transition from hunter-gatherers to agriculture had begun. And by 900 AD, the Mississippian mound builder culture was in Kentucky. French explorers began going through the Ohio River and the Kentucky or the Mississippi River. And so they saw Kentucky. We don't think they actually got out and explored Kentucky at all. Some of the French explorers were Samuel de Champlain, Jacques Marquette, and Louis Joliet. And so again, they traveled extensively in the Mississippi Basin. The fur trade between the French and Indians became extensive, including setting off what is known as the Beaver Wars in the mid-1600s, as tribes fought over the rights to the beavers in the various parts of Kentucky to sell to the French. The English colonists began crossing the mountains into Kentucky by the late 1600s, and by 1750-51, a survey crew by Thomas Walker and Christopher Gist explored Kentucky, and then Daniel Boone began his explorations in 1767. James Harrod founded Harrodsburg in 1774-75, which became the first permanent European settlement in Kentucky, followed by Boone's Station. And by the 1780s, the residents of Kentucky had grown so numerous, they began requesting to separate from Virginia and form their own state. Finally, by 1792, they had their state constitution written, and it was approved by Congress, and they were welcomed into the Union. In the Civil War, the state was known as a border state, with about half the state wanting to be in the Confederacy and half wanting to be in the Union, or officially neutral. However, the majority of counties banded together to form a shadow Confederate government and did join the Confederacy in December 10th of 1861. There was a couple of battles for Kentucky. Leonidas Polk of the CSA led one effort at fighting for Kentucky, but it was the later Battle of Perryville on October 8th of 1862, that General Braxton Bragg of the Confederate States met Don Carlos Buell of the Union, and it was a tactical victory for the Confederacy, and yet strategically they had to retreat back into Tennessee and lost Kentucky. Today, Kentucky is still known for horse racing, tobacco farming, and bourbon. Right here. Now, my connection to Kentucky. I am doing the state's birthdays to celebrate the states where my family has lived. My family, how do I define that? My wife and I, my two sons, my brother, my parents, and grandparents. During World War II, my father, a native Texan, joined the Army and spent 2 years at Fort Knox, Kentucky, at the United States Armor School for training as a tanker, and then as part of the school brigade, helping to train other tankers. But then in December of 44, his school unit, the 777th Tank Battalion, shipped overseas to fight in Germany. And then just over 80 years later, my son, a professional soldier, spent the summer of 2025 training ROTC cadets where? At Fort Knox. So it's cool that my son's grandfather was also there. So there you go. Just the facts about the bourbon. This is a 94 proof bourbon, finished in toasted new oak barrels. I paid $59.99 for it at Goody Goody here in Fort Worth, but specs had it for $48.41. Total wine $45.99. I overpaid. Tremendously fabulous. Now, there's no age stated on here, but it is labeled as a straight bourbon, so it is at least 4 years old, and research tells me that it's actually got barrels in there that are 6 to 12 years old. So there you go. Tasting notes. I get peanut, brown sugar, caramel, wood, baking spices, vanilla, some kind of pastry, maple top donuts, perhaps. I gave this a score of 88 and a letter grade for drinkability, A+. This is now a favorite of mine in the Kentucky bourbon category, and this isn't even a high rye or high proof. So, this is really like the third bourbon I ever tried when I started drinking whiskey 15 years ago or so, and loved Elijah Craig. And now this is the first time that I've had the toasted barrel, so stepped up a notch. Details. History. This is a Heaven Hill product, and they like to claim Elijah Craig was the first to use charred new oak to age his corn whiskey in, and of course it went on to be called bourbon. Elijah Craig was born in Virginia in about 1738 and was a Baptist preacher, thrown into jail a couple of times by Virginia authorities for preaching the gospel without a license, because Virginia had a state church. The Anglican Church was the established church of Virginia at that time. Now, Elijah Craig worked with Patrick Henry and James Madison to promote religious liberty, but eventually he led his congregation to move westward in 1782 into Fayette County, Virginia, that would become Kentucky. Craig established a classical school in 1787, and then the Rittenhouse Academy in 1798. Now, there's a name whiskey lovers would like. He established his distillery in 1789, and the claim that he was the first one to age whiskey in new charred oak barrels is largely legend and cannot be documented. And of course, our good friends at Evan Williams would beg to disagree. Elijah Craig did own about 4,000 acres of farmland and several slaves. The brand Elijah Craig Bourbon was released by Heaven Hill in 1986. And Heaven Hill was founded in 1935 by the Shapira brothers, who then hired Joseph Beam, cousin of James B. Beam, as master distiller. Heaven Hill is still family-owned to this day. 5 out of 5 points for history. And a good story. I like that. Bottle, label, and packaging. Again, the bottle's very distinctive, but it does remind me of Angel's Envy somewhat in shape. And it does have a wood stopper with, I think that's a real cork. I mean, if it's not real, that's a darn good imitation cork. So I think that's real. Got clear glass. The label's printed onto the glass, but it allows a generous view of the whiskey. There's no hoo-ha statement here. There's no history. It's just a very simple label. That's it. The website is a nice website. So 4 out of 5 for bottle, label, and marketing. Appearance of this whiskey is pretty brown. I mean, this is a pretty dark whiskey here. In the glass, there it is. So I give this 4 out of 5 for appearance. Coming to composition now, what we've got here is this product of Heaven Hill in Bardstown, Kentucky. Is a straight bourbon, no age statement, so that means it is at least 4 years old, but everything I've found says it's aged 6 to 12. It's 94 proof. This is the basic small batch bourbon that is just rebarreled into toasted barrels. And the barrel char they use is level 3. The second aging makes this bourbon softer, gentler, sweeter, with notes of brown sugar, caramel, and wood. It's got a mash bill of 78% corn, 10% rye, 12% malted barley. So 13 out of 15 for composition. On the nose is a little bit weaker than I would want it to be, but I still get vanilla. Yeah, peanuts, spice, brown sugar. I'm going to say pastry. I mean, actually, this is a pretty good nose. 8 out of 10. Tasting. Truth to nose. I get the peanut, brown sugar and caramel, wood, baking spices, vanilla. I got more vanilla on the nose than in the mouth, but some kind of pastry. I don't know what I'm getting there. Maple top donuts, maybe, which are my favorite. The maple donut bourbon. So 23 out of 25 on the taste. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. It does coat the mouth pretty well, so it's got a rich feeling. It does have a decent burn, okay? Noticeable burn. The burn is at least proof appropriate, maybe punches above, okay? And it's a nice burn. I'm one who likes a burn to my whiskey. Smooth is nice, but it can be overrated. If you get an appropriate burn, I'm all about that. I like that. So this is a good mouthfeel, a good burn. So it does have a nice punch to it. Once in a while, it gets me a little ethanol flavor, maybe. It's smooth up front, and then the punch hits you. The wood and spice lingers longer on the finish. Maybe some vanilla too. So 12 out of 15 for mouthfeel, burn, and finish. Versatility, flexibility. Clearly, this is superior neat. I mean, I'm a big fan. I love this one. And this one's got enough punch to it to where it might sustain ice. If you like to ice your whiskeys, I don't. I still think it's a little bit lower proof, but this one, the punch is there. So I'm thinking it would hold up better under ice than a lot of whiskeys would. So I think it's a little bit versatile there. How about in a cocktail? I've not made a cocktail with this bourbon. So let me go do a cocktail real quick. I'll be back. I'm back with an old fashioned. Here in my Kentucky glass, wearing my Kentucky flag. I've got a couple of slices of orange peel in there, one cherry. I used Angostura bitters, a couple of dashes, and black walnut bitters. The sweetener I used maple syrup because I was getting maple top pastry for some reason. So let's see what this is like. Very good. Oh yeah. The black walnut bitters gives it a little bit more nutty because I was getting those peanuts. The maple syrup doubles down on that maple pastry I was getting. I think for perfection, I should leave the orange out. Orange always kind of predominates, but I think it's very well balanced between the bitters and the sweet. That's just darn good. All right, so for versatility, flexibility, 5 out of 5. Price, value, and availability. Again, I paid $59.99, $60. Goody goody. Specs had it for $48.41, and total line $45.99. So I failed to price shop before getting this, and so I paid way too much for it. So, and I have a habit of doing that. I got in a hurry, did not shop around. Goody Goody's the most convenient to me, and I do most of my business there, but oof. This whiskey shows very good availability, though. And after tasting it, it is definitely worth the $50, but is overpriced at $60. So that's what I'm saying. But still, I'm glad I got this. This is really very good. I just wish I'd price shopped. So 9 out of 10 for price, value, and availability. Bonus points, 5 out of 5, because this is just darn good. I love the history behind it. The bottle I've always liked. You know, can't go wrong with this one, okay? Just shop around a little bit. Total score of 88. Letter grade for drinkability, A+. My analysis and recommendation, again, this is now a favorite in the Kentucky bourbon category for me. And it's not even a high rye bourbon. You know, usually my favorite, like Old Granddad's a favorite. It's a high rye. So this is a low rye, and yet it's a favorite. Jim Beam's even higher rye than this. Of course, I really like Jim Beam products as well. So if you can find this one for $50 or under, absolutely get it. And the regular small batch of this brand, again, was my first bourbon after Jim Beam and Jack Daniels 15 years ago or so. So Elijah Craig's been a favorite of mine for a long, long time. And I love their rye as well. So this version, higher price, but the quality matches the price. All right. Happy birthday, Kentucky, for sure. Now, what's coming up next? We're going to return to our rye tournament. And next up in the rye tournament, we have Michter's Straight Rye Single Barrel. All right. That's coming up next. That'll be on Stab the Dragon channel. This is American Catechism, out here.